It's really a great honor to be able to come and honor Boris. I've had two really great mentors in my life that changed my life in science. Boris Magasanik was one of them, and Marshall Nurnberg was the other. And the story goes back to something that analogous to what was commented on earlier, that I was an undergraduate at Harvard College, and by my sophomore year I decided to major in biochemical sciences. And Boris was a tutor in biochemical sciences, and at the time he was a professor at Harvard Medical School in the microbiology department. And I had never really experienced anything quite like him in my first year and a half at Harvard, because we had these sessions, these hour-long sessions, where he forced me to think, not just memorize, which was not the way most science at Harvard, certainly when I was there, was taught. And he was obviously a very gentle man. I didn't know him very well. I really had at the time no real personal relationship with him because we had these short sessions. But the magic was that when I was a junior became a junior in college, he moved to MIT, and he told me that he was moving to MIT to join Salvador Luria to build a biology department at MIT. And at the time, this goes back to the late 50s, at the time the revolution in bacterial physiology and bacterial genetics that was talked about earlier in the day was ongoing. And he urged me while I was at Harvard to come in my spring of my junior year to take the course that he and Salvador were giving on bacterial physiology and bacterial genetics. I was a little bit intimidated by that thought, but he helped me get over that, and I took the bus down Mass Ave every day for the semester and took their course, which course really completely changed my life in science. It epitomized what I said earlier. The courses I was taking in biochemical sciences at Harvard were really exciting. I liked what I was learning about pathways and chemistry and biology, but it was 95% memorization. And in this course, there was no memorization. You were given experimental data and asked to interpret it, and you were given experiments that people had done in science and asked to interpret those experiments and what other experiments you would do to validate or further test your hypothesis. I can tell you for the first 2 or 3 weeks in this course, I had no idea what was going on. And in terms of sort of history today and reminiscence, I was very fortunate that the person I tended to sit next to in this course in the old biology building was Sam Latt, who I think some of you know, who unfortunately passed away much earlier than he should have passed away. And Sam kind of befriended me and helped me get oriented to the course. But listening to Salvador and Boris in the course and the mechanistic thinking that they taught as to how you try to figure out a complicated problem really piqued my interest in science. And Boris was very kind and instrumental in other ways. I was debating at that point in my life whether to go to medical school or go to graduate school. I disappointed Boris deeply by going to medical school, but he forgave me, and while I was a junior and after I'd taken the course, he introduced me to a microbiology physiology professor at Harvard Medical School called Ed Lin, who studied polyol metabolism, and convinced Ed to take me into his lab to do a thesis when I was in college. So the wonder of that experience, again, linked directly to Boris's influence, was that I got to interact with a group of postdocs who worked with Edlin, and again, learned more about bacterial physiology and really got to appreciate something that I had really no exposure to, and probably most undergraduates don't have exposure to, kind of social structure in a lab that was a serious lab working on a complicated biology problem. Because Edlin had these Tuesday night sessions in his lab where he would have food brought in from Joyce Chen's in Belmont, and we would all sit around, and one of us would present their work, get critiqued and ask questions in a very open, positive environment where you learn from your peers. And that was a very exciting experience. And then Boris further helped me in my senior year when he helped me get an NSF fellowship to go to the West Coast to work in Arthur Pardee's lab during the summer between college and medical school. And I got to meet Pardee, learn whose name I knew from their course, got exposed to Jonathan Gerhardt, Jonathan Beckwith, and again, furthering the experience about the wonders of science and the amazing insights that were being made into how bacterial cells worked, how their biochemistry worked, how their physiology worked, and how you thought about approaching that. And that approach really stuck with me in my entire scientific career and really stimulated me to go into research after I did finish my medical training. And without it, I don't think I ever would have gone into research. I was able to go to NIH after my time in medical training and landed in a genetics lab, the Nuremberg lab, that was still working on some aspects of the genetic code. And it's really very different persons with very different backgrounds. Marshall Nuremberg and Boris shared something that I found, and I find even today, just absolutely wondrous. They both were enamored with the inherent beauty of science, and they could communicate that both not only emotionally, but they could communicate it in the analytical way as well as the emotional way they talked about science. And for a young person who's starting out in their career and wants to do research in biomedicine, which is what I was interested in, that attitude, the rigor, the beauty of being able to make a discovery and how you thought about that, and it's just inherent, even though this was my interest initially in going to medical school was to do something that would actually help some people with disease, the inherent beauty of what you did in order to accomplish that was something that I really got from Boris and Marshall. And I will be eternally grateful for that because it really changed my entire life in science. And the one other comment I would make is about the exposure to MIT through Boris, because I was a Harvard undergraduate. I grew up in Dorchester in the 40s and 50s, and had a rather narrow social experience before going to Harvard, to say the least. Dorchester really was a ghetto environment. And as an undergraduate at Harvard, I was often put off by and somewhat overwhelmed by what I considered the social structure of Harvard College at the time. In all of my decades that I've known people at MIT, from the first time I ever came to MIT, I've always had this incredible gratitude and fondness for the institution. that I do owe to Boris in a very direct way, because I learned, and I think it's really true, that MIT has no social caste system. It is built on the coin of the realm is what you can do scientifically in whatever field you're in, no matter what kind of background you come from. You're not made to feel uncomfortable if you came from social background A versus social background B. And I cannot tell you how that influenced my life, made me comfortable to go into science. And without the exposure to Boris, starting when I was a tutor at Harvard College, I don't think any of that would have happened. So thank you very much for inviting me to this.